You may know her as the other missing girl. On May 3, 2002, 7-year-old Alexis Patterson walked the half a block to High Mount Elementary School in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, accompanied by her stepfather, LaRon Bourgeois. LaRon left Alexis at the crosswalk as the crossing guard accompanied her across the street to the school. But when the final bell rang that afternoon, Alexis Patterson wasn't among the children who rushed out of school to head home. She was never seen again. While the little girl's disappearance was big news in Milwaukee, the news was soon overshadowed by that of another missing girl, Elizabeth Smart. Elizabeth was found 9 months after her abduction, but Alexis remains missing 20 years later. When a person goes missing, there's a special kind of pain in the not knowing. I want to tell you the stories of those who never came home. Today, I want to tell you the story of Alexis Patterson. I'm Kona Gallagher.
And I'm Ethan Flick.
And this is And Then They Were Gone. Everyone.
Welcome back.
Thank you for joining us once again. This week's episode is going to be a great one for the people who leave shitty comments about us focusing too much on race.
I feel like we've been getting a lot of those lately.
Have we? I don't know.
I know. I'm the only one that reads them.
I know. You're obsessed. But this isn't just me saying it this time. As I mentioned in the intro, Alexis went missing a month before Elizabeth Smart was abducted from her bedroom in the middle of the night. And the disparity in the media coverage between these two events was really the first time that the issue was talked about on a large, public scale. People were kind of starting to notice that pretty missing white girls got a lot more media play than missing people of color. And then 2 years later, when Lacey Peterson's disappearance caused a huge media frenzy, it led journalist Gwen Ifill to coin the phrase missing white woman syndrome. We as a nation apparently collectively forgot about this, though, until Gabby Petito. But, we don't need to revisit that rabbit hole. We've already went down that. And Alexis's case is both tragic and fascinating in its own right, and her story, with all of its twists and turns, deserves to be told on its own. And it is one of those stories that, despite my best intentions, ended up being a two-parter.
I feel like that's just bullshit. You have no intentions other than writing two-parters.
Okay.
Just to annoy me.
Well, I will get to this. So this one, I was like, okay, this is a well-publicized case in terms of, it wasn't super well-publicized at the time, like I just said, but in the years since, a lot of true crime creators have covered it. And I was like, okay, well, this is pretty straightforward. We know what's going on. I can actually knock this out really quickly. And no, I was wrong, because Lord help me. Just like the Brittany Williams case, there's even a DNA test in this one.
Oh, no.
Yeah, just like it, except somehow crazier.
Okay.
So that is what led this to being a two-parter. So the 20-year anniversary of Alexis's disappearance just passed about a month and a half before we're recording this, and her mother, Ayanna, is still actively searching for answers. So let's go. Let's do this. Let's do this two-parter and get into the incredible story of Alexis Patterson. Alexis Patterson was born on April 4th, 1995 to Ayanna Patterson and Kenya Campbell. Ayanna was young when her first daughter was born, only about 16. Kenya, however, would have been in his early 20s.
So illegal.
Yeah, I don't know what the age of consent is in Wisconsin. I mean, in some states it is 16. Like some states that would have been perfectly fine. Like, let me tell you, this isn't our podcast, but child marriage is legal in many, many states in our country to children as young as 12. But anyway, I don't believe they were married. I think they were just, together, whatever. But it sounds like by the time Alexis was born, they were not a couple any longer. And, it seems like they have an unstable relationship, and Kenya had multiple run-ins with the law. I was able to find court records dating back to 1999, most of which, though, were minor, like driving without a license, things of that nature, nothing crazy. But those charges did eventually lead to some jail time. And I only bring that up because it actually does come up later. Like, it's relevant. I'm not just talking about his criminal history for funsies or whatever. Ayanna and Kenya split, and she ended up marrying a man named LaRon Bourgeois, who was about 11 years her senior. So I don't know when they got married or like when they actually got together, but one of the articles I read said that LaRon came into Alexis's life when she was only 3 months old. So I don't know if that's just like when they met, when they started dating, like how the timing of all that worked. But the point is that Alexis didn't really have a relationship with her biological father. LaRon was really the only father that she had ever known. Ayanna told reporters that her daughter, who spent most of her life as an only child, was a daddy's girl. In early 2002, though, Ayanna and LaRon had another daughter, Dysoni. And this is why I'm kind of confused as to like where their relationship was. Because like I said, he came into Alexis's life when she was 3 months old, but I don't think that he and Ayanna were really together then, because somewhere in between all of this, LaRon ended up having a son with a different woman, and the son was named Yoni. And at the time all this is happening in 2002, Yoni actually lived with him. LaRon also had a daughter, I believe, but I don't know like what her age was. She didn't live with them. So he had other children. But Yoni did live with them in 2002. Like Kenya, LaRon also had a criminal past, but his criminal past was a little bit more serious than Kenya's. He also had some like random, driving type incidences, but he had also served 2 years in prison for a drug conviction. But more alarmingly, he was also the getaway driver in a 1994 bank robbery that resulted in the shooting death of a police officer. LaRon didn't serve any jail time for that, though, as he was granted immunity in exchange for his testimony against a co-defendant.
Sounds like a movie.
Exactly, right? I mean, yeah, so this was 1994, so he would have been in his mid-20s at the time. That's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, that could have been a much worse sentence had he not flipped.
Yeah, and it was a much worse sentence for the person that he did flip on.
Well, yeah.
The officer who was killed was a Glendale police officer, and Glendale is a suburb of Milwaukee. So it was a different jurisdiction than where Alexis's case took place. She was actually in Milwaukee proper. So it was Milwaukee Police assisted by the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Department, who mainly worked on this case. So again, not Glendale. It wasn't one of their own, quote unquote. However, I don't think it's unreasonable to assume that officers working Alexis's case didn't have a very favorable view of LaRon going into this whole thing.
Probably not.
Yeah. Alexis was a bright, friendly child and a good student, though at the time she was struggling with reading a little bit. So she did have straight A's. Like, she was one of those kids who before she went to school, she would do drawings and call it her homework. Like, she did love school, but that doesn't mean that every single thing came easily to her. Reporter Gary Wickert wrote an excellent article for GM Today in November of 2002 that really gave an insight into Alexis's family life. The Bourgeois family was not rich, and as I mentioned, LaRon had a criminal past. So a lot of unkind assumptions were made about the family, and especially about LaRon. But this article really does give you a glimpse into the family dynamic and, what it seems like is not what it was portrayed as or what people assumed when all of this was actually unfolding.
So you're saying it was a better life than what people thought?
Yeah, absolutely. For instance, LaRon worked with Alexis on her reading almost every day and helped her with her homework. The night before her disappearance, LaRon realized that Alexis was taking what he called shortcuts. Now, I'm going to describe this, and while I get LaRon's point, I actually think that this serves to prove what a bright child Alexis was, because the skills she's displaying here are actual life skills that really would have served her well. Now, according to LaRon, quote, she was supposed to read a paragraph and answer multiple choice questions about what she had just read. What she was doing instead was simply looking at the multiple choice answers and then selecting the one she found appearing in the paragraph above, end quote.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, that's that's how you take tests.
Exactly. That's how you do everything in life, basically. Genius, honestly. She was 7 years old and you figure that out. That's so much better.
Was she getting the answers right?
Yeah, I think she was.
Doesn't sound like a shortcut to me.
No, it sounds like she's just smart.
I mean, she can't write, a comprehensive essay on what she was supposed to read, sure, but
right.
She can definitely answer the questions.
Yeah, exactly. You can get through it. Fake it till you make it, girl. So, okay, yes, like I said, I get it. It was bad that she wasn't actually reading the full assignment. Reading is fundamental, but, she knew from an early age that you got to work smarter, not harder. LaRon usually checked her work as well as helping her, but he didn't get a chance to that night because Alexis and her mother went to the grocery store to get snacks for Alexis to bring to school the next day for snack day. Even though Alexis didn't like sweets, she chose to bring cupcakes in for her friends. The next morning, the family was up at around 6:30 a.m. During breakfast, LaRon was looking over Alexis's homework. And while he was doing that, he did this thing, as parents, I was reading this, and I was like, oh, I feel it. I feel it in my bones. He asked her twice if she had read the assignment.
Oh, here we go. And her answer, of course, both times was yes.
Yep. And then he said, oh, okay, read it to me.
Mm-hmm.
She could not.
Weird.
Yeah. So, it all fell apart for her. LaRon and Ayanna were both like, listen, you can't lie to us. We asked you twice. You said you had read it. You clearly did not. You can't just lie to us. That is absolutely not okay. And again, I've had these, we've had these exact conversations with our children.
Many times.
Yeah. And so that's, what happened. It's we would have been cool, but you lied. And so now you're in trouble. And so LaRon and Ayanna decided that Alexis wouldn't be allowed to take the cupcakes to school that day.
No cupcake day?
No cupcake day. And as you can imagine, Alexis was devastated.
Yeah, I would be.
Well, exactly. I mean, she didn't even really like cupcakes, but that was still her thing that she was going to do. And she was so excited. So yeah, it was not a happy walk to school that morning. Nevertheless, LaRon and Yoni both accompanied her on the 200-foot walk from their house to the school. Their school was literally right there, half a block.
Just right across the street.
Yeah, exactly. So LaRon and Yoni and Alexis set off. And, Alexis, of course, is angry, pouting, not talking to them, whatever. And so they got her to the crosswalk. The crossing guard came over, ushered her across the street. LaRon watched her cross the street. And then he and Yoni turned around and went home.
And is that it? Is that the last time anyone saw her?
Kind of, but no.
Okay.
That is the last time that LaRon or Ayanna saw her.
So nobody saw her actually going into the school?
Correct.
and maybe I'm jumping the gun here, did she ever actually make it into the school? Did the school report her as being sick that day?
We are going to talk about that.
All right.
LaRon drops Alexis off, sees her cross the street, goes home with Yoni. No big deal. It was a pretty low-key day for him after that. He kind of hung out at the house. His mother came over to visit. Nothing big or important or whatever. So he was pretty much home all day. Ayanna needed to get her car fixed. So she and a friend went to go get some parts for the car and then took those parts to a mechanic in order to get it fixed. So she was gone for most of the day. But
with a friend?
Yeah, with a friend.
And you said his mom came over?
Yeah.
So both have alibis?
Yeah, apparently.
Okay.
But a mother and a friend, not the strongest alibis. But again, if she did go to the store, to the mechanic, I'm assuming that would have been relatively easy to prove.
Sure.
But in terms of their movements in that day, there isn't really any more publicly available information. What is known is that they were both home before 3:00, which is around the time that Alexis would usually come home. So Alexis would usually get home at 2:55. So again, it was 200 feet. So Alexis would generally walk home by herself. She'd usually get there around 2:55. And Alexis was apparently always on time. She didn't dilly-dally. She just came home. So when she was just 5 minutes late, Ayanna began to worry because it just, not panic, but worry a little bit because it just wasn't like her. Ayanna did say that Alexis could have a bit of a tood and she knew how upset her daughter was with them in the morning. So her first thought was actually that Alexis had acted up or something and had gotten in trouble and had gotten held after school. So she just walked across the street to kind of see what was going on. But when she arrived, she got the news that would change her entire life. When Ayanna got to the school, they told her that Alexis hadn't been there all day.
And did they call her parents? Did they make an attempt to find out if she was sick or why she was absent?
No. Even though Alexis had a perfect attendance record, a fact that she was very proud of, the school never called the Bourgeois family to let them know. Apparently, the policy at the time for that school is that they did not contact the parents unless the child was gone for 2 consecutive days.
What? This is elementary school?
Yep.
Nobody sees a problem with that?
Yeah, so, I will take a little detour here to talk just briefly about that because, yeah, that seemed insane to me. And of course, the Milwaukee School District did come under fire after this for this policy. And they're like, is this really the policy? What the hell? And it is, but it's not evenly applied across the school district. So the superintendent or whoever was just like, well, yeah, that's the policy. We've got so many kids and we can't keep up with calling everyone every time that they're absent. So we wait until it's 2 days because we just don't have the capacity to do it. But there was an investigation, there were several schools within the school district that did contact parents anytime a child was absent, regardless of if it was the first day or not. And so what I was reading didn't really go into this. My question would be, what are the racial and socioeconomic differences between the schools that call whenever there's an absence and the ones that wait 2 days?
Yeah. And to go along with that, my question would be the amount of employees and resources that those schools have.
Right.
Or don't have.
Right. So they were very defensive. They're like, it's policy. Everybody followed policy. But like, obviously that policy is fucking stupid.
Yeah. I mean, like, if that's the policy across the school district, like, regardless of elementary, middle, or high school, that's, first off, super, super fucking easy to skip school when you're in high school.
Yeah, right? How amazing would that be?
Like, just every once in a while, just take a mental health day.
Yeah.
And not have to, like, worry about them contacting your parents at all.
Yeah,
like,
sounds amazing.
That's great.
Yeah.
But also, like, insanely stupid for younger children.
Well, yeah, and also this school, High Mountain Elementary School, where Alexis went, from all appearances seems to have actually been a really like tight-knit school. Like the teachers knew all of the kids, not just their students. Like everybody like was really caring about each other. Like it was a good school full of good people. So the fact that even there this still happened is even crazier.
And let's also make sure everybody listening understands what we're talking about. This is not, a kid that is sick whose parents call and say they're going to be out, or we're taking them out for X, Y, and Z reason.
Yeah.
They're not at school. Parents haven't called. There's no explanation as to why they're not there.
And she's 7 and has perfect attendance. Like she was definitely noticed. You know what I mean? Like her teachers would have noticed that she wasn't there. But it's not the individual teacher's responsibility to make that call.
Right. No, that's in the office.
Exactly. So when Ayanna gets to school and is told that her daughter was not there at all, she, of course, completely freaked out. She ran home screaming. She said, quote, "I snapped. I went crazy." And she ran home screaming, "My baby wasn't in school today." Upon returning home, Ayanna immediately called the police. But despite the fact that Alexis was, again, just 7 years old, LaRon says that they took an hour to respond. When we cover older cases of missing kids, like, 70s, 80s, kind of around there, it's always wild how little police seem to be concerned about their well-being. But, this was 2002. It was post 9/11. We had Blackberries and Napster, and Britney Spears had already been on the VMAs with that giant snake. This is not that long ago. And they still were like, I don't know. We'll get there eventually.
Did they also think that she was a runaway? Is that the next stage in their wonderful investigation?
Yeah. Did you read my notes before this?
No, but I'm really sensing a pattern here about how, cops in general, law enforcement in general, really don't want to look for missing kids.
Yeah, even little ones.
They just don't want to waste the resources.
She was 7.
And again, I've said this in previous episodes. Investigate it as though they are missing. And if they happen to turn up, because you've talked about the statistics of this, and most kids that go missing come back. Yeah, 99%. And that's great. But what realistic resources does it waste for you?
Yeah.
As a police department, you take one uniform guy off the street for an hour, 2 hours, whatever, while he starts the investigation of a potential missing child or missing person in general.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
I would say 2, right? I would say 1 to stay and talk to the parents and look around the house.
Sure.
And then 1 to actually go out. Right?
Yeah, I'm thinking, smaller than Milwaukee or small town, limited resources.
Yeah.
Not in this case, just in general. Again, I think you can afford to take 1 to 2 police officers off of running speed cameras to investigate this.
Yeah, exactly. Early on, Milwaukee Police Chief Arthur Jones said that Alexis had apparently run away.
Oh, because the evidence is so there, right?
Well, he said that she ran away after she was dropped off at school because of that argument with her parents.
Right. So here's a girl that has perfect attendance at school, has a great family life, gets into one argument about not bringing cupcakes and decides, nah, that's it. Packing my knapsack. jumping on a fucking train.
Literally, that is what I wrote down. Like, are you sure you didn't read my notes? Because I said, fine, but that was in the morning. Where did they think she was in the afternoon, riding the fucking rails with a hobo bindle?
Yeah, like that kind of thinking is so stupid.
Yeah. And he even had the audacity to say, quote, "We have no suspect because we have no reason to believe right now that a crime has been committed." End quote.
Oh my God. It's a fucking 7-year-old girl.
Yeah.
Like a 7-year-old child
Yeah.
is nowhere to be found.
After many, many hours.
Runaway or missing, it doesn't fucking matter whether you think a crime has occurred or not.
Yeah, like I get that you don't have a suspect. Like, that's fine.
Sure.
But like, clearly something is very un-okay here.
Yes. Even if she is a runaway.
Yeah.
Find her.
Yeah, like you could say that shit at 9 a.m. before you like find her in the school hanging out in the supply closet or, you know, whatever. But you can't say that after she's been missing for the entire day. And I think he even gave that statement like the next day or the day after. Like, I don't even think that was something he said on day one. They did do some sort of investigation. Like, they did bring cops out that day. They checked around the school and the neighborhood that evening because, like, yes, the most likely scenario at that point is that she was nearby. She was hiding somewhere. She left of her own volition.
Yeah, okay.
You know, because abductions aren't common. Stranger abductions, even less so. And
not that you would think that if you religiously listen to our show, but sure.
Yeah, no, but I mean, they're not. So again, you have to start with the odds, right? And you kind of go out from there. So you go with the most likely scenario and then you go out. And so they searched in the school, they searched around the school, they searched the house, like they searched the places she was most likely to be. But there was no sign of her. Now, the one sentence description of this case is 7-year-old girl vanishes after her stepfather walks her to school. So obviously, 99% of us immediately think, oh, so the stepfather did it.
Right, but didn't you say both parents walked her to school?
No. Ayanna did not walk her to school. It was the stepfather and his son, Alexis's younger half-brother. And I don't know how old he was, but younger than 7. So yeah, so there was a child with them, which interestingly, I had never seen reported anywhere other than this article. Like, I'd never seen any mention of Yoni anywhere at all in any capacity, whether it was him being there that day or even existing in the first place. But regardless, according to this article, Yoni was with them. But more importantly is that when police eventually interviewed the kids at school, they said that Alexis made it to the school grounds. She was seen that morning sitting on the front steps of the school crying. Which again, if she's upset about the cupcakes,
yeah, it fits.
Fits.
Everything fits.
It fits. And that means that if those witnesses are correct, then LaRon's story checks out. He sent her off with the crossing guard. Crossing guard got her across the street. She made it onto the school grounds. But teachers say that Alexis never made it into the building. Another concern about the first days of this investigation was that Alexis disappeared on a Friday. So by the time this all started, all of the teachers and students were home for the weekend. So I don't know who actually got interviewed immediately and who was interviewed days later. Police didn't make a public appeal for help until that Monday. Prior to that, they of course interviewed LaRon and Ayanna extensively, which makes total sense. But their feeling was that police were focusing on them at the expense of investigating other avenues. On Tuesday, May 7th, the parents were interrogated for nearly 10 hours down at the police station. At the end of it, they and the rest of Alexis's family were begging police to keep investigating other avenues. They were afraid that the opportunity to find their daughter was just slipping away.
So at this point, she's been gone for 4 days?
Yeah.
And they're still focusing all their attention on the parents.
Yeah, for the most part. Like I
Or
said,
have they did the initial search around the school.
right. And they are interviewing people at the school, the teachers, the students and stuff. So it's not like they're only doing that. But yes, that is certainly where their focus is.
I can see it, but with that extensive of an interview, you got to either make them persons of interest or eliminate them as suspects, and I feel like you don't need 10 hours of interrogation to do that.
Yeah, I don't know. And, so beyond that, like, again, I do know that some sort of investigation was done over the weekend. I don't know all of the details about that, but what I do know is that weekend, about 75 of Alexis's family and friends passed out flyers and did their own search. Police did set up a mobile command unit in a park near Alexis's house. And by Tuesday, May 7th, which is the day that the parents were interrogated for 10 hours, police had also searched for Alexis by boat, motorcycle, and by horse.
Okay, so it does sound like they're doing stuff.
They are, yes. I don't want to make it sound like they're doing nothing, but everything that they're doing sounds like they're searching for a body, which is fine. You do have to do that. But it seems like they really were zoning in on that, Well,
I think that given that there are no other leads at this point, I would probably do the same thing.
Yeah.
Because you don't have anywhere else to search. You don't have any other avenues to explore, really. Do I think that they should have been doing more canvassing of the neighborhoods and also handing out flyers and things of that nature? Sure. But the next thing to do would be to start searching for a body.
Yeah, but what's interesting is that from what I've read, and it's so hard to tell exactly what happened based on newspaper accounts, but it does seem like they kind of did a general search of the area. And then, after the weekend when she still wasn't found, it wasn't until then that they started actually knocking on doors and talking to individuals who lived nearby. So several days had passed.
Yeah, I don't like that. I mean, that should have been done very quickly, I think.
And we've seen in other cases when that doesn't happen, it does really harm the investigation. Knocking on doors, like Jacob Wetterling, we haven't covered that on this show, but that case could have probably been solved had police just knocked on doors the night he went missing. Jean-Ralph Marie, we talked about police never knocked on doors and all sorts of information was potentially lost there. It's a big deal.
Yeah, but it's comes down to, deterioration of memory and subtle observances that may mean nothing at the time. But if it was questioned within a certain amount of time, you would have recall and say, oh, yeah, you know what? I did see a little girl fitting that description talking to a man that looked like this.
Right.
But there's nothing extremely out of the ordinary. And if you're not questioned about it right away, it slips your mind.
Well, and that's exactly what happened. Once police started publicizing this, right? And, letting the public know that this was happening and started really making those appeals for help, the leads did come in. One lead was a phone tip telling police that they should search a nearby warehouse. Apparently, this caller had heard screams coming from the warehouse that he said sounded like a little girl, super creepy stuff. He called it in. Police did go investigate. They didn't find anything. But, to kind of what you were saying, Anthony Little, who's one of Alexis's uncles, said that he had spoken with a woman in the neighborhood who he described as, quote, stable, knowledgeable about the kids in the neighborhood and familiar with Alexis, end quote. And she insisted that she saw Alexis near 50th Street and West Garfield Avenue, just a block from the school, around 4:30 on Friday, a full hour and a half after her parents realized that she was missing and called the police. But the woman had no idea that anything was wrong.
Right.
She just saw Alexis a block from her school. Who cares? That's not a big deal in any way, So she didn't know it was important. until days later.
But days later, it also makes you think, how accurate is that now?
Right. And I think that's why it was important that he pointed out that, like, this is somebody who already knew Alexis.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like, oh, yeah, I saw a girl who looked that.
Like it, right.
She knew Alexis. So I think it is a little bit more believable than.
No, I have no doubt that she is remembering Alexis. It's just several days later, it makes you question.
Oh, like the
whether
exact
she
date
has
and
the
time?
date.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and that actually was my question for some of these other alleged sightings, because once they started interviewing the students, some of them also said that they saw Alexis on the school grounds on Friday afternoon between 3 and 5 p.m.
Okay, so now you've got multiple witnesses, both kids and at least one adult.
Yeah.
That saw her after school.
Right, but my problem with that is, so my question is, again, because it's kids, like, do they have the right day?
Yeah.
And then also, by that time, her parents knew she was gone. So, and they lived right across the street from the school. So I feel like they would have been out. They would have been out looking for her, but also they were calling the police, but the police didn't come for an hour. So I don't know where they were when they were waiting for the police. Were they at home waiting for the police, not looking for her, or were they out looking for her? Like, would they not have seen her had she been on school grounds between 3 and 5 is basically my question.
I don't know. What if she was on the opposite side of the school?
Yeah, I don't know. And
they couldn't see her.
Yeah.
If they weren't like actively out searching for her, but maybe that's not something they were thinking about because, like you said, maybe they were waiting for the police at their house.
Exactly. So I just don't know. So again, I kind of do take those, like the kid sightings of her on the school grounds, with a little bit of a grain of salt. But as they interviewed these children, the police found out a lot of other things. Several kids reported that they had seen a late model red GMC SUV with tinted windows hanging around the school. Apparently, this vehicle had been spotted several times in the days leading up to Alexis's disappearance, but had never been seen dropping off or picking up any kids. And then once Alexis went missing, it was never seen again.
So he was scoping out the school, waiting for a target of opportunity.
Well, that's what it sounds like, especially combined with what the teachers said. They gave police chilling information. 2 weeks prior to Alexis's disappearance, a man had tried to abduct a boy near their school.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Like, the administration sent out letters to the parents to warn them about this.
I mean, are we assuming that this was reported to the police?
Yes.
Okay.
Like, this was like an official thing. I don't know. I don't think the man was like ever caught. I don't know any other circumstances beyond it.
Okay. Okay. But when was this reported?
2 weeks prior to her disappearance.
2 weeks prior. It's the same school. And yet the police were still acting like this was a runaway case. You have evidence. You have a case, a known case of a potential abduction from that school. And then 2 weeks later, you have a girl that goes missing and you're like, nah, she ran away.
Because of cupcakes. Yeah, I get, yeah.
And like, okay, I get it. Milwaukee's a big city, but you don't think some of these same cops were involved in the same investigation? Because a police department is not citywide.
Right.
They're broken into sectors so that you become familiar with the neighborhood that you're policing, supposedly. This would have been known.
Presumably. Yeah. I mean, when the school sends out a letter, that seems pretty official to me.
Well, fuck.
Yeah, but it even gets worse, though. After that letter was sent out, Alexis's parents, of course, sat down with her and was like, hey, don't talk to strangers, don't get into cars, et cetera, et cetera. But the talk apparently didn't work. A week later, so we're talking a week after this attempted abduction and a week before Alexis's disappearance, Teachers say that they saw Alexis talking with a, quote, random lady outside of the school. They alerted Alexis's parents about that. And Alexis's parents spoke with her again. It was like, hey, remember how this kid was like almost kidnapped and we told you not to talk to strangers and you're just talking to some random lady across the street? Like, don't do that. However, teachers reported seeing the little girl talking to the same woman just 2 days later.
Did they didn't report this to the police. They reported.
I think just to the parents, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you put all of this together, it does not look good.
No, it doesn't look good at all. And I can only assume, of course, because, nobody's going to put this out as public knowledge, but I would assume that the parents told the police all of this during their interrogation or investigation.
Yeah. Well, and even if they didn't, like the teachers definitely did. So the police...
Right, but didn't you say that the teachers weren't interviewed until like days later?
Right, but the interrogation also wasn't until days later. That 10-hour one, that was Tuesday.
At least the initial investigation.
Yeah, the initial, I have no idea.
I'm sure honestly, it had to have come up.
But I think, the initial one, I think they might have been so panicked about it that like you don't remember everything necessarily. So I don't know if they did. They could have.
All right.
But even if they didn't, like police did know about it shortly thereafter. This isn't something that came out like a year later, 5 years later, or anything like that. It was just a few days later. As the first week of the investigation closed, the Milwaukee community started coming out for Alexis. A man named Keith Martin, who had no connection to Alexis or her family, decided to help organize a community search. Keith was a third shift security guard at Master Lock and a business management student at nearby Milwaukee Area Technical College. He gathered volunteers and donations and was able to mobilize about 100 people to search on bicycle and on foot. They all wore t-shirts that said Operation LAP, Locate Alexis Patterson. Keith told the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, quote, "This broke my heart and I know it did other people. We're doing this because we want to check with people to help find out if there's anything else, anything they might remember now that they didn't before. If we can get one person out here to tell us one thing they saw the day Alexis disappeared, it would be a great help." End quote. In fact, many of the Operation LAP volunteers had no direct connection to Alexis. They just wanted to bring one of their own home. Military members from the downtown Milwaukee Military Entrance Processing Station also volunteered their time to help search. So by this time, police were conducting a grid search and going door to door in the area, like I was mentioning before. And they were also extensively looking into the family. In addition to Ayanna and LaRon, police also interrogated Alexis's biological father, Kenya, though he was quickly ruled out as a suspect because he was actually in jail at the time.
It's a pretty solid alibi.
Yeah, it was. And it wasn't for anything. Again, it was like literally for driving without a license, and he was in jail for like 3 days, but it was those 3 days,
Yeah, I mean, even if he was in jail for something more serious.
Right, exactly.
Still in jail.
Yeah.
So couldn't have abducted her.
Part of the 10-hour interrogation of Alexis's parents involved polygraph tests. Within days, a police source leaked the results to the press.
Oh, okay.
According to this source, Ayanna passed her test, but LaRon failed. But LaRon apparently found this out when a reporter asked him about it, saying that police never called him and told him that he had apparently failed this test. And he also expressed disbelief that he actually failed, saying, quote, "If I would not have passed, then I wouldn't be standing here," end quote.
Well, that's not true because you can't arrest somebody because they're inadmissible in court. And
right.
A lie detector test, failing a lie detector test doesn't mean shit. It shows that you possibly use deception in answering certain questions. So like, what's the threshold for quote unquote failing? Is your name LaRon? Yes. Fail.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and so that's the other thing. Like, so after this reporter was like, hey, you failed your polygraph. Do you have any comment? He's like, what the hell are you talking about? He, of course, tried to figure out what was going on, but police like wouldn't tell him what questions he apparently was lying about or anything. But this information of him failing was, of course, widely spread and just served to turn the attention back to the family. Around this time, Ayanna claims that after flying to New York to tape an episode of The Ricky Lake Show, she came back only to find Milwaukee police rummaging through her car, which had been parked at the airport without a warrant.
what the hell?
Yeah. And again, this is just according to Ayanna. Like, I don't have any corroboration on this, but, you know, they also said that, like, they would come home and, like, see, like, police watching the house and, you know, looking at them with binoculars, things like that. Despite suspicion being placed on the parents, Operation LAP kept working. In the first 2 months, they had covered 30 square blocks surrounding Alexis's home. By this time, a retired police officer turned private investigator named John Robin Wells had taken the helm, but his relationship with the Bourgeois family was slightly strained. Ayanna and LaRon believed 100% that their daughter was alive. So they were a little resentful, I guess, that this group was like solely searching for a body. Plus, John Robin Wells made some odd comments to the press. In the article that I've been mentioning in GM Today called A Girl Named Pi, he said, quote, I have a good idea of where we think she is. I think I can even narrow it down to a particular neighborhood, end quote. So like, all right, where is she then? So this guy, John, claimed that Alexis was in Illinois and that LaRon and Ayanna knew exactly where.
Based on what?
Well,
Why Illinois?
Well, I mean, it's nearby. It's like a big city near. I mean, you know, I don't know. But okay, but this is it. So he said that there have been sightings of a girl matching Alexis's description with a light-skinned woman at a mall. He doesn't specify where this mall is. I don't know if this mall was in Illinois or if it was in Wisconsin or like whatever. But he also says that like he believes that the light-skinned woman was Ayanna. So he believes that Ayanna had Alexis at a mall somewhere.
Then why would she report her missing?
I don't know, but he claims that Ayanna and LaRon had made several mysterious trips to Illinois. I don't know. He told reporter Gary Wicker, quote, I also believe that the parents also know where she is, but have been threatened and are scared for their lives and the lives of their children, end quote.
So is this guy just like making shit up and talking to the press?
I don't even know. It's weird because those are some bold claims.
Yeah.
And he even claimed that Ayanna has been trying to tell him this in secret, saying that she has whispered certain things to him in the past as he had given her hugs. He's like comforting her and she's like, I had my child in a mall in Illinois. Like, people are trying to kill us. Like, I have no idea.
Sounds like the PI is a little delusional.
Well, he also believes that there was a $30,000 bounty on LaRon's head due to his testimony in that bank robbery case that led to his co-defendant being put away for life. So I think like that's kind of his theory. Like Ayanna and LaRon like either allowed Alexis to be kidnapped or hid her or something, and they're scared to say anything because there's this bounty on LaRon's head because he testified against this guy almost a decade ago. I don't know.
Sounds like a movie.
Yeah, and not a particularly good one. When Wickert was interviewing Ayanna and LaRon for this article, he told them about what this guy, you know, John Robin Wells had said. And Ayanna immediately burst into tears and said, quote, if I knew where my baby was, there isn't anything in the world that would stop me from getting her, end quote. And then LaRon just put his head in his hands and cried. He later described what the past months had been like for them, saying, quote, it's a living hell that never stops. I can never get her off my mind. What is she going through? Is she alive? You don't know what it's like being a father and not being able to protect your daughter, end quote. He went on to say, quote, "It's been 5 months and it seems like yesterday. I've got to be strong for my wife. I cry alone," end quote. He also said that Ayanna doesn't sleep, she doesn't eat, and she basically never stops crying. They still have this baby daughter to take care of who is only around 6 months old at the time of Alexis's disappearance. But after everything happened, Yoni went back to live with his mother. Ayanna and LaRon's life basically fell apart after Alexis's disappearance. Overwhelmed by the constant stream of people knocking on their door and, their surveillance and everything, they moved to an undisclosed nearby location just a few months after Alexis went missing. Yet, they still persisted. So again, we have heard cases of parents who move away and just completely disappear from the public eye after the initial weeks or months or whatever of the investigation. That is not what happened here. They did change their address, but they did not stop looking. They searched, they did media interviews, and they did everything in their power to get the world to notice that their little girl was gone. And they certainly had some catching up to do. In the first month of Alexis's disappearance, there were around 65 articles written about her. In the first month of Elizabeth Smart's disappearance, there were over 400. In August of 2002, LaRon expressed interest in speaking at the White House's conference on missing, exploited, and runaway children. He wanted to not only get Alexis's case directly in front of the president, but to reiterate that every missing child should be a priority regardless of race, income, or social status. But LaRon admitted that his criminal past would probably preclude him from getting an invite. LaRon talked about the disparity between Alexis's coverage and Elizabeth Smart's, saying, quote, "She's been shortchanged. It could be because she's a child of color. It could be because we're poor. Either way, I guess she's just not that important to the producers at the news stations or the editors at the newspapers. She's been shortchanged, period. She's not important, but she is. She's just as important to us as the Smart's daughter is to them. We feel the same way about our daughter as they do about their daughter. We love her and we miss her, and it's painful going on day to day without having her," end quote. As summer turned into fall, fewer volunteers came out to search, and Milwaukee police scaled back their own search operations. In September, Police Chief Arthur Jones took it upon himself, this guy, the runaway guy, he took it upon himself to speak to the Associated Press, where he said that Alexis was probably dead.
What?
Yeah.
This guy needs a fucking PR rep.
I'm sure he had one. This is a large department. He said, quote, "It's frustrating because at some point in your heart and mind, you still hope against hope that she's still alive, that someone is caring for her, but experience says that's probably not the case," end quote.
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Even if that's something running through your head, don't
say it inside your head.
Yes, don't say it out loud.
To the Associated Press. What are you accomplishing with that? What's your end goal here? Where are we going with this?
Other than to add more pain to the family.
Right.
That's the only thing that accomplishes.
Yeah.
Is hurts the family more.
Yeah, exactly.
Just shut the fuck up.
Yeah. Just say nothing. But regardless of statistics, Ayanna and LaRon clung to the belief that someone had Alexis and that she was still alive. But the stress and grief led LaRon into a downward spiral. In that first year of the investigation, LaRon spoke repeatedly and openly about his criminal past and how it was in the past and that he was a changed man and he didn't want to be judged for that. And he certainly didn't want to have Alexis be judged for the decisions he had made in the past. And while that might have been true at the time, after all this started happening, LaRon did begin to slip. He allegedly began taking and selling drugs and did become violent toward Ayanna. In April 2003, as the one-year anniversary of Alexis's disappearance loomed over them, a judge ordered that LaRon could have no contact with Ayanna. In court, LaRon pleaded not guilty to 1 count of battery and 1 count of disorderly conduct while armed. The couple officially divorced the next year in 2005. Through the pain and heartache, Ayanna never gave up believing that her daughter was alive. Her relationship with police, as you can imagine, has been up and down over the years. But Milwaukee has not forgotten the little girl. Every year, public officials walked the route that Alexis walked to school, and they laid a wreath in honor of her. In 2012, May 3rd was declared as Alexis Patterson Forget-Me-Not Day by Mayor Tom Barrett. Alexis's case went cold, and everyone tried to pick up the pieces of their lives as best as they could. Media coverage died down to anniversaries, at least until 2016, when an Ohio man came forward and said that he believed Alexis Patterson was alive. What's more, she was his ex-wife.
You're killing me with these cases.
Yeah, so listen, we recently covered the case of missing Richmond, Virginia girl Brittany Williams. And that had a DNA test and someone claiming decades later to be her. And we got so many comments on those episodes saying how insane it was and how it didn't make any sense and they don't understand how this DNA test came back and it wasn't her and, whatever. That whole thing has nothing on this.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, we're late with these episodes because I went down an internet rabbit hole about this mysterious woman, the DNA test, and a whole conspiracy theory regarding not just Alexis, but several missing children from the Midwest.
Okay.
So that is what we're going to be talking about in the next episode. As always, if you're a member of our Patreon, you'll be able to get access to that shortly after this one. But for everyone else, you can hear the conclusion of our story and this crazy conspiracy theory right here next week. Alexis Patterson has been missing from Milwaukee, Wisconsin since May 3rd, 2002. She was last seen wearing a hooded red pullover nylon jacket with a gray stripe running down each sleeve, a light purple blouse or blue shirt with horizontal stripes, light blue jeans, blue and white high-top Nike sneakers, and cluster-type diamond sunflower-shaped earrings with yellow gold posts. She was carrying a pink Barbie book bag, and her hair was styled in 2 French braids, which were pulled back into a ponytail. Alexis was around 3'8" and 42 pounds at the time of her disappearance. She's a black female with brown eyes and black hair. She has a mole on her eyelid, a scar below her right eye, and a bump on her left pinky finger. Alexis was 7 years old when she went missing. She would be 27 today. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Alexis Patterson, please call the Milwaukee Police Department at 414-935-7401. You can also contact the Milwaukee Field Office of the FBI at 414-276-4684 or the Milwaukee Police Department Cold Case Hotline at 414-935-1212. You can see all of the sources for this episode along with photos and videos at our website, andthentheywere.gone.com.
And be sure to follow us on social, and Then They Were Gone Pod on Facebook and at ATTWG Pod on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. If you like what we're doing, please subscribe and consider leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It will help new listeners find us. And the more people that listen, the more chances we have of bringing someone home.
And we'll see you here next week for a brand new episode.
See you next week.
And Then They Were Gone is hosted by Kona Gallagher and Ethan Flick, while research, writing, and editing is done by Kona Gallagher. Theme music is The Stork by Ketsa. Additional music is provided by Kai Engel. And Then They Were Gone is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!